Welcome. This is the Culture Otaku. Take a seat and let's talk about some anime. Today, I want to talk about one of my favorite modern day anime, Mob Psycho 100. Now, Mob Psycho 100 was created by the same mangaka behind One Punch Man, so it follows a similar path in telling a story about a character dealing with immense power, but where I feel it differs is the substance to the story. Although Mob Psycho 100 is a simple story in its essence, it's told very well. It's able to invoke a full range of emotion in the viewer, from the great humor that you would expect of a story of a child psychic who falls under the tutelage of a scam artist. It also manages to bring out real tears and an impressive feat for a show rooted in comedy and psychic powers. While in its most basic form, Mob Psycho 100 is a show about psychic abilities and the exorcising of ghosts and evil spirits, it goes much deeper when it comes to the protagonist Shigeo Kageyama. We witness Shigeo Kageyama, better known as Mob, learn to deal with his emotions that oftentimes take control and lead to outbursts of immeasurable power of psychic abilities. Mob has this emotional scale from 0 to 100. When it gets to 100, a certain emotion takes control, and that as a result manifests a certain type of psychic ability. In one episode, post destruction, Mob feels sadness, and the way that ends up manifesting once it breaks past 100 is actually rebuilding a school that just a couple of minutes ago he pretty much obliterated. Despite having these immeasurable powers, Mob just wants to live a normal life and wants to be able to achieve his own progressive strengths without the use of his powers. He wants to be able to impress a crush that he's had since elementary school without the use of his powers. He feels that at the moment, if he didn't have powers, he would be an empty shell, and that's something that he wants to change. He wants to be able to rely on himself and what he worked on rather than something that he was given at birth. And this is something that the antagonists learn from Mob after he's pretty much wiped the floor with them, that if they didn't have these powers, who are they? You shouldn't hold yourself to such a high standard when, you're just a normal human being that happens to have powers, and you should be able to set yourself apart from your powers and be an average and human being that's perfectly ordinary and okay. Because of that, that's one of the main reasons that he struggles with his emotions, because he knows if he can't control his emotions, that the psychic abilities will take over. So he essentially puts this emotional handicap or shackle on himself, oftentimes to the detriment of himself. Now, this is when we see that Reagan is a great mentor, because Reagan gives him the advice that, hey, don't use your powers on humans. And just because you have powers doesn't make you special. You're still ordinary, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just because you have powers doesn't mean you should hold yourself above everybody else and essentially make yourself as God, because no, without those powers, you would be nothing. And he doesn't want that for Mob. He wants Mob to be a normal kid and enjoy his life outside of, using him to profit his con artist business. Reagan is a pretty good mentor for Mob and helps him develop Mob as an individual and help Mob be able to come out of his shell and be able to handle with his emotions as a normal human being and not put so much pressure upon himself. The story is something to pay attention to. This isn't kind of your mindless anime where you could just put it on and listen to it in the background, for cool fight scenes. Although there are really good choreographed fight scenes, which I'll talk about in a bit, it has a story that demands to be paid attention to. It has some nuances that you'd miss if you just were scrolling on the gram while watching some anime. So for the story, I would say, hey, definitely give it a watch. Now, the fight scenes. The fight scenes are great, and a lot of that comes with how they were animated and the color palette used. The colors really pop in the show, from the pinks and the greens and blues and reds to a psychedelic effect, and it's really captivating. It catches the eye and it's like, wow, this is pretty good. It has a cartoonish aspect and removes itself oftentimes from realism and reality, but that gives it its benefit and charm to be like, this is something impressive. And that, you gotta give credit to Studio Bones, the guys behind pretty much all the greatest animated shows of all time, Full Metal Alchemist, Boku no Hero. They just do an amazing job. So, from the captivating display of psychic abilities in upside down worlds and flying through the sky teleportations and creations of black holes, the display and variety of psychic powers and fight scenes in Mob Psycho is up there. It's high caliber animation and choreography. Even from the likes of Reagan, who can throw hands despite not having any powers. Yo, Reagan be putting people down straight with his fist. Like, he blurts out some of his fighting techniques as his psychic powers, and it's hysterical. But yo, just straight throwing hands on people, OD. So although Mob Psycho is simple, it does everything that is simple very well, and that makes an amazing animation, And it's not a lot of episodes. If I'm not mistaken, Mob Psycho 100 is 2 seasons and somewhere around 25 episodes. I highly recommend this watch, and despite this being a shorter episode than usual, that's not a bad sign for Mob Psycho. I would say that that's somewhat of a compliment, I would highly recommend watching Mob Psycho. It's an amazing watch, for the firefight scenes of throwing hands to the pretty good underlining story if you actually, pay attention throughout the show. Out of 10, I would give the show maybe a 9 out of 10. It does, like I said, everything that's simple extremely well. So I'm gonna just let the music play, and until next time, I'll catch y'all later. This is the Culture Otaku. Peace.